Hello and welcome back. It is time for us to look at our top story with regards to health for today. Now, to join us to speak about infertility is a general practitioner with an interest in maternal health. Ladies and gentlemen, please make very welcome Dr. Andrew IROEMEH. Hello, Dr. Andrew. Great to have you on the show.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
All right, now, Dr. Andrew, tell us, what is infertility? Some people have an idea of what it is, but we know that there's a medical recognition of what infertility is. What is this?
All right, infertility is basically the inability of a heterosexual couple to achieve a pregnancy, despite having regular sexual intercourse for about a year.
All right.
Yeah, so it has to be up to a year before we, the specialists, can say, okay, this can be diagnosed as infertility.
All right.
And what are the first steps someone needs to take when you realize that you've not been able to conceive after this set specific period? And is it based on age or certain things?
Well, there are several factors to be considered. There's a female factor and there's a male factor. So we have to look at these factors and know if the couple, because basically in our environment, they feel that men, it's mostly the women that is responsible for it, but it's a combination of both or either one of the two. Essentially, the female factor is about 30 to 33%. The male factor is, basically the same thing, 30 to 33%.
So it's balanced?
Yeah, it's balanced, basically. Sometimes you can have a combination of both. Sometimes you don't even know what the cause is. So we look at that, then we also have to evaluate if they meet the parameters to, to say this couple is infertile, and also to be able to identify if they be having regular unprotected sexual intercourse.
All right.
So, and that we say that it has to be about 3 times a week.
Okay,
for
so
it to
3
be
times
regular.
a week,
yeah.
1 year and
up to a year.
All right, so let's ask this question. What causes infertility? What are some of the causes?
Leading causes, yeah.
Yeah, so for the male factor, we have, it's basically essentially has to do with sperm production. So we look at the sperm and say if it meets certain parameters in terms of the volume, the content, how long it takes to liquefy, and if it meets, other components within the sperm. So for the female factor, which is more elaborate because the female reproductive organ system is more, it's more complex. So we look at the cervix, we look at the fallopian tubes, the womb, and the ovaries, and make sure, all of these factors are being met for us to be able to identify which one or a combination of more than one to be able to diagnose it.
That's interesting, and perhaps that's why the focus is usually on the woman. Because for a man, it's just 1 or 2 things that could potentially go wrong. But for a woman, there are many areas to check. So even if your fallopian tube is all right, your cervix might have issues. Even if your cervix is all right, the quality of your eggs, so there are a myriad of issues around there.
Yeah, exactly, because for the woman, basically, for pregnancy generally to occur, for the woman, the eggs has to be produced. Then the sperm has to meet the egg, and the egg has to be in the womb and grow, and for that to happen. So at different stages, there are different things that can occur for the woman. So if the tubes are blocked, if she's not producing, she's not ovulating, she's not producing eggs, if she has an infection that has affected her reproductive system. So there are so many things, to look at. So then there are different tests that you can do depending on the factor that is involved for that specific woman.
Talking about tests, what are the treatment options that are available for treating infertility in both gender?
So for the treatment, first of all, you have to identify what the cause is. So the tests can range from, doing something as little as a pelvic ultrasound scan, then blood tests to check her hormone profile, to know if she's ovulating. You can do further scans to check, our follicular tracking, HSG. There's an X-ray called a HSG, hysterosalpingogram, which looks at the womb, the anatomy of the womb, and know the contour lines and see if there's anything within the womb that can be obstructing the passage of semen, into the woman's reproductive system. So when you've, looked at all these tests, then if there's any abnormality, then you can, do target treatment for that. Some of them require drugs. There's a particular drug which would help the woman to ovulate if she's not ovulating. Others...
What causes, sorry to pause you there, what causes a woman not to ovulate? I know we have certain conditions like PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. Are there other, could you tell us a little bit about that? Because in Nigeria, you almost cannot talk about infertility without talking about PCOS. So can you tell us a bit more and throw more light on PCOS?
So, like you rightly said, PCOS is the main cause of infertility in women. It actually stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome. And the syndrome consists of amenorrhea, that's absence of menstruation or irregular menses. Then when you do a scan, a pelvic scan, you see polycystic ovaries on the scan. Then the woman has signs of what we call hyperadrenergism. She has certain male factors, male pattern of hair growth, and all of that, and she's obese. So those are the components of PCOS. So primarily, most women have it but don't even know because, access to healthcare, access to quality healthcare, the cost of the healthcare that it gets, and information as well. Our environment, people don't tend to go to hospitals as often as required. They just feel, I'm not feeling fine, or I'm okay, I just go to the pharmacy, I just pick up a pill or something. So with that, PCOS, the doctor has to do all of these tests to identify if she does have PCOS. And if she does, then with PCOS, there are certain drugs which can be administered to her to enable her to, one, ovulate. And there are also non-pharmacological methods for her, lifestyle modifications, for her to lose weight, exercise, diets, and stuff like that.
All right, that's
great. And when we talk about infertility, there's no way the conversation about the breakthrough in technology, IVF, won't come in. Is IVF the magic cure for infertility? Would it take care of all infertility issues? And could you put us through the science of it? How does it work? And what treatment does it particularly target? What areas?
Okay, so there are different types of IVF, which is in vitro fertilization. However, there's also in vivo fertilization, which we know as artificial insemination. So in that case, in artificial insemination, the sperm is injected into the woman. So that method is essentially reserved for couples who the male partner can't be able to, or has low sperm count, or his male parameters are not, essentially normal. So they get a sperm donor, and the sperm is injected into the female partner. Also, it's also reserved for same-sex couples who intend to have a child. So they get a sperm donor, and it is injected into, the female partner. But for IVF, which is generally known, in vitro fertilization, there are different types. We have the intracytoplasmic sperm injection. We have the other methods such as assisted reproductive technology.
Could you break it down for us, please?
Okay.
Can you speak English, please?
No, I mean, for the first one, because it's important for us and people who are watching out there who might not perhaps understand the terms of the procedure, and are considering going for IVF to understand what each procedure takes.
Okay, so for assisted reproductive technology, one of the methods is where the woman's egg is harvested and the man's sperm is brought and a baby is formed in the lab. So in vitro essentially means outside of the body. So
but it's planted back in.
Yes, then they plant the embryo which is formed in the lab back into the woman. So
why does this happen? Is that the woman does not have the ability to
in the early stages?
Or?
So the situation is the eggs may not be sufficient. So they have to harvest as many as possible at a time, induce what in the process called ovulation induction. So the eggs might harvest like 6 or 7. Maybe it's only 1 that will go through. And when you talked about magic, IVF, the success rates in some centers can be from as low as 30, some you can get as high as 40, 60.
Oh, so it's not really...
Well, it's not magic, so to speak. It's not
so
magic.
It's not everyone who does IVF
yes.
would have it. Because we've had stories of people who go for IVF and they've tried 2, 3, 4 times. And
it's expensive.
Yes, it's expensive because the equipment used in harvesting these eggs and the technology involved is quite expensive.
Do they have to cut the woman open?
No, it's a minimally invasive procedure. It's just they'll make a small cut on the belly and insert so many probes and look, there's a screen and harvest the eggs.
All right, fair enough. Okay, thank you. Now the next one you were talking about.
So then there's also the intracytoplasmic sperm injection, where the man's sperm is injected. The cytoplasm is a part of the cell of the egg. So that is just injected into the woman and is planted back. However, there are still other methods. There is surrogacy, whereby a woman volunteers or is either hired or paid to carry the child for the couple.
Sorry, to ask you that question, why would some women not be able to carry their own child? So it means that their eggs are all right, the man's sperm is all right, it's just now that they're not able to carry the child to full term.
There are so many factors.
All right, what are some of them?
The tubes may be blocked. She may have had a history of recurrent abortions, severe pelvic sepsis, pelvic infections, PID, untreated STDs that can affect her fertility. So the problem is not that she doesn't have eggs. It's just the eggs cannot pass from where it is to where it should be for pregnancy to occur. So,
and I think some people also do it for cosmetic purposes. Like they don't want to alter their summer body and so.
We rarely see that in this part of the world.
Before we go on, I know some people might be watching out there and might have some questions for the doctor. You might want to call in now. Our phone numbers will be scrolling on your TV screens. Now we know that this is very personal to people, so you might have your own specific questions, whether for you or for someone that you know. This is the time for you to call. We've spoken on so many issues that perhaps some people don't know. PCOS, we've looked at PID, we've looked at sperm, low sperm count. If there's anything at all you'd like to ask the doctor, we have a few more minutes. Please go ahead. The numbers are scrolling on your TV screen.
Okay, now, doctor, are there personal lifestyle choices that focusing on men that could affect your fertility rates and levels? And exposure, they say that some people in certain occupations run the risk of infertility.
Okay, so there are some risk factors associated with infertility in men. One is heavy tobacco smoking, heavy alcohol consumption, drug use, like some men who use steroids for muscle building.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it affects their fertility. Also, people who are in the healthcare sector involved in radiology, where they are exposed to lots of radiation, and people in the chemical industry. So those are the type of occupations that can predispose men to
we once heard as well about even insecticides and certain sprays. Is that true?
Yes, that falls under the chemicals.
All right.
So because these are heavy chemicals, we classify them as heavy chemicals. So continuous exposure to this type of chemicals can put a person at risk. So they are not primarily a cause. We just call them risk factors.
Right.
So the more you are exposed to, the chemicals, the more likely you are to.
Now let's deviate a bit and look at the ethics of this. There's been advancements in technology that allows for you to a certain degree, determine the gender of your unborn baby. What would you make of this? A lot of people have said, it's unethical, it's playing God, but people feel they have a right to decide what they want. What's your general take on this?
Personally, I don't believe it's playing God, because God gave us the knowledge that we have. But most of it is still theoretical, because there's a practice involved called sex determination. Now, it's not 100%. So in science, if you're not getting up to 90 to 100%, then it's not working for everybody. So it's basically theoretical. And the methods involved are not things that, we do in the lab. For conventional methods of achieving a pregnancy is not something you do in the lab. You just advise the couple in terms of time of sexual intercourse, position of sexual intercourse and stuff like that. So it's just basically, advice. If you do it this way, you tend to have a male child than a female child.
All right, something else again, just debunking some myths. Not really, to be fair, but
you leave everything to chance, as long as the babies.
But as many people say, as long as our babies are healthy, we're good with it. And usually, I found out that when a woman gets pregnant, that's when you know that all she's concerned about is giving birth to a healthy baby,
yes.
Especially if it's her first or second. Now, another myth, or what some people have said, I know a famous designer said once that test tube babies, as they call them, are not real babies. So they are a bit less than, and that's why in society today, when some people go through IVF, they keep quiet about it. Even when they testify in church, they just say, oh, God did it. They don't talk about the fact that it was through assisted means. Are they right in any way to say that children who are born, whereby the doctor is assisted and it was formed outside the womb, they are not as normal as children who went through the right process?
Are they inadequate in any way?
No, they are not. As a matter of fact, there is no evidence available in medicine that supports that fact. Because there are many children who have been born through IVF and have become, scholars in their field, have become renowned people. So really there's no evidence. But as you mentioned, in terms of the level of discretion with IVF, especially in our environment as compared to what is obtainable in the Western world, here, because of the stigma associated with infertility, people don't tend to talk about, how they eventually, got pregnant through, assisted reproductive technology. So there's a bit of discretion, and most fertility clinics, they have, concealed and high level of discretion methods. People have to, be discreet about the things they do, coming in, who they intend to see. And
people don't, sorry, they cover their faces when they are going into the doctor's,
people, they behave in a certain, type of way that, you're just like, okay, well, that's what you want. So we just try to provide the services that they require.
Oh, yes, it's a big deal. I know some couples who they don't want people to see them in front of the clinic.
Yes.
They don't want people to see them walk into the clinic, so they look around, search to see. But how do you think we can overcome this stigma? Is there anything
I don't even know why people should be ashamed of it. You have a problem. Why do you go to the doctor if you're sick in the first place?
Yeah, well, just like it's not a disease, but people tend to see it because of the level of education and, ignorance, as I would like to call it.
And Nollywood. Yes, it's a contributing factor.
That's education, negative education.
Yes, that's exactly.
Maybe we should have more movies that promote this and talk about, because entertainment is very powerful.
It is.
Very powerful.
It's very powerful, and, people need to be informed, have the right information about, conditions like this and be able to see their doctors on time. Sometimes you don't necessarily have to be sick to see your doctor. Okay, because it's currently recommended that while or when you decide to get pregnant, not even when you get pregnant, when you decide to get pregnant, you and your partner should see the doctor and discuss with the doctor on methods that, that can help and things you should do, things you shouldn't do, and situations like that. Rather than just waiting till you get pregnant, you want to start your antenatal, then you see your doctor.
So at what age do you think it's important for both male and female to try and, maybe because some people wait till after they got married and now discover that, okay, we're doing this thing and nothing is happening. At what point should people start checking, or, for a man and for a woman?
So if they have gotten married, the recommendation is for women who are below 35, they should see their doctor immediately. If it's up to 1 year, they can, go and see their doctor at that time. For women who are above 35, once they've tried for up to 6 months, they can go and see their doctor.
All right.
So that is the, the differentiation, because at the age of the woman is essentially the main factor, because she has, so many factors involved. She's the one that will carry the child.
Yeah.
So if she's above 35, for a woman, the quality of eggs is reduced. The number of eggs that can be produced during her lifetime, is growing short. So she's more concerned, and the individuals have to see their physician as soon as possible.
All right, wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, Dr.
Thank you for having
Andrew.
me.
Thanks for coming to speak to us about this. Thank you indeed. We'll go on a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be wrapping up the show. But again, if you have any questions for the doctor, is there any way that people can follow you on social media?
So I am on Instagram at Dr. Andrew UGO. That's DRANDREWUGO.
It's on the screen, so you could check
And
it out.
Mm-hmm.
the clinic at Fetal Clinic, FETALCLINIC. Fetal
Right.
Clinic.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have had Dr. Andrew IROEMEH with us, a general practitioner who has an interest in maternal health, and we've been looking at infertility, causes, prevention, and management. We're going to quick break right now. When we come back, we'll be telling you what's happening today in history, who is celebrating, and who is not. See you soon.
To enjoy more of these our Ogbonge videos when you just watch, press this button to subscribe on top of our YouTube page. You go love am.